Right, we'll call this meeting to order. The meeting of the Madera County Transportation Commission Board Policy located here at the Madera County Transportation Commission, 2001 Howard Road, Suite 201, Madera, California, 93637. It is now 3 o'clock. Sandy, can we get roll call, please?
Commissioner Truce,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Here.
Commissioner Wampa.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Absent are Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Gallegos, and Commissioner Poitras. We have quorum.
Okay, Commissioner Gallegos did mention she'll be up joining us here in a couple of minutes. This meeting is also via Zoom. You can visit us here with the website. If you log on to our website and get the link there, you can type in the webinar ID of 893-4418-7048, and the passcode is 376466, or you can call in with the phone number 1-669-900-6833. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and get our flags. Councilmember Truce, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our public comment. This time is made available for comments from the public on matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda. Each speaker will have a limit of 3 minutes. Attention is called to the fact that the board is prohibited by law from taking any substantive action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the board does not respond to public comment at this time. It is requested that no comments be made during the period on items that are on the agenda, today's agenda. Members of the public may comment on any item in today's agenda when the item is called, and should notify the chairperson of their desire to address the board when that agenda item is called. At this time, I'll ask if there's any members from the public wishing to make any comments.
I'm seeing that online.
Okay, no members here, so we'll go ahead and close public comment, move on to MCTC, sitting as a Transportation Policy Committee. Item 4, transportation consent items. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial by MCTC staff and will be approved by one motion if no member of the committee or public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in the listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the committee concerning the item before action is taken. Okay, I'll ask if there's any member here not looking at. Okay. There is a motion. Before we get that second, I'll ask if there's any member of the public wishing to make a comment.
Seeing that online.
Okay, we'll close the public comment. There was a motion. Second. Okay, we have a motion from Supervisor Commissioner, forgive me, I'm losing it here. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Yes, and then a second from Commissioner Weymouth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on. This is transportation items, section 5. Okay, section 5A, state legislative update.
Yes.
You have information here.
So this is Corey from Corey Consulting, who's joining us today. He's going to provide us an update on any kind of legislative update, and then a matrix update on all the bills that we took interest in over the past year. And also may have a short discussion on, next steps and building another matrix for the upcoming year and what our focus may or may not be. But with that, Gus, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thank you, Director Taylor. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Gus Corey, State Legislative Advocate for MCTC. I'm excited also to introduce Mitch Weiss. Mitch was the former Executive Director for the California Transportation Commission. He's now a member of my team. He also recently served as the Interim Director for the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission as well. So he brings a wealth of experience, and I think he can help us execute on MCTC's priorities. So it was a pretty busy year for us. Lots of defense as to be expected, especially when you had a substantial state budget deficit. Thankfully, we were able to stave off a lot of the proposed cuts. We kept intact the awards for the active transportation program for cycle 6, and there might not be money for cycle 7, but for those jurisdictions up and down the valley that did receive an award from the commission, we were able to keep those projects whole for funding. We fought to be able to keep funding for RENA, the regional housing, or sorry, for REAP, the early action plans for regional housing intact. We saved all but about $40 million. The governor was proposing to cut $300 million from the $600 million allocated for that purpose. And we were able to hang on again to all but 40 million. So hopefully that kind of keeps the ball moving on, any of our affordable housing goals there. Just as far as where we are with respect to the timeline of the legislative session, and then I'll talk about a couple bills, the special session, and kind of next steps and other things that are going on, as Director Taylor mentioned. So the regular session adjourned on August 31st. Governor Newsom had until September 30th to sign or veto legislation. Just so you know, we reviewed over 5,600 bills for you. We came down to a list of about 21 on your bill matrix. And as I mentioned, there was a little bit of defense here. So there's a couple bills on your matrix pertaining to basically protecting our revenue streams. AB 7, this was a bill that was authored by the previous Transportation Committee Chair. And, what she was wanting to do is basically to enact principles of the governor's climate action plan for transportation infrastructure. And that's problematic because it was very difficult for us to pass Senate Bill 1 back in 2017. And this would have put a higher premium on vehicle miles traveled being included as a metric, and things that would have compromised our ability to leverage state funding against our Measure T dollars to deliver safety projects or even mobility projects. We wouldn't have been as competitive, so we were able to defeat that bill. There's another bill, it's AB 1335, that was authored by Assemblymember Rick Zabur. He's from Los Angeles. And it would have required jurisdictions to account for the entire population within a region when you conduct your regional housing needs assessment, which just makes it even more onerous to comply with getting your SCSs, adopted, among other things, and would have further compromised our ability to acquire state and possibly even federal funding. And we were able to defeat that by talking to Senator Caballero. We got that bill killed in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator Caballero ran legislation for us that I think is pivotal. That's Senate Bill 768 on the matrix. What this bill does is it requires the Department of Housing and Community Development to assess the implication, of vehicle miles traveled per region, because the way that VMT analyses are currently done, it's a one-size-fits-all approach. And, clearly there's an advantage by the highly urbanized areas who their constituencies live closer to housing, to transit and such, so they have a smaller VMT footprint. And that tends to disadvantage us anytime we put in an application again for some of the state grant programs. And so the governor did sign the bill. HCD is doing a study so that there's more justification over how the administration chooses to affix VMT and just give more merit to how that's assessed on various projects when they're evaluated for various state applications. There's one other bill I think of interest. And so we didn't take a position on this one, just given it didn't really sync up with when we were meeting and when the bill was kind of being amended and going through the process. But Senate Bill 960. So Senate Bill 960, what this bill does is it now requires Caltrans to take inventory of complete streets within their right of way. So if you have, say, whatever class bikeway and you're entering through the Caltrans right of way, traditionally, we were the ones having to pick up the cost to make that investment. And now this is making the department more responsible for having that in their planning, and then also being more of a funding partner and alleviating us, since again, it's within the Caltrans right away. So that's a positive development, I think, for MCTC. Happy to answer any other questions that you may have on the bill matrix. But there was a special session on gas prices. So Governor Newsom had called a special session on the same day that the legislature was adjourning the regular session on August 31st. And they met on October 1st in order to approve AB 1 in the second special session. It's Assemblymember Hart from Santa Barbara's bill. And this is the bill that requires basically the oil refineries to keep more inventory during the winter months so that we're insulated from price spikes. The governor is referencing the price spikes that happened 2 years ago. So it was kind of catching some folks off guard. It has zero implication on the gas tax, which is what we mostly care about. And that's because that's our bread and butter as far as how we finance our state infrastructure. We're not dependent upon the general fund. We're really dependent upon the state gas tax for all intents and purposes, and a vehicle registration fee to fund our infrastructure needs. And so they did not touch that component. So that was the special session. So just a couple other quick items. I had mentioned CAPTI, and then I'll talk about the gas tax successor source and some other like the crystal ball for 2025. So with CAPTI, again, the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, this was something that was a compilation of 2 executive orders that were issued by Governor Newsom in 2019 and 2020. So the first part was saying that we have to use, in 2019 was we have to use existing resources in order to promote more multimodal options and get people out of gas-powered vehicles. And so I think that's why there's been more intentionality by the administration to try to look at existing resources and prioritize things like transit, passenger rail investments. And we're participating in that endeavor, as MCTC and then with the Valley as a whole. The second executive order, which was issued in September of 2020, was, you may recall, the governor's prohibition after 2035 on having the sale of gas-powered vehicles in the state. So just really putting a fine point on, we really have to change our reliance on petroleum. As a result, we're going to have to find a new funding mechanism. But in the interim, what the administration is doing is they want to revise CAPTI to further embed the requirement to consider vehicle miles traveled, and specifically passenger vehicle miles traveled, which is problematic. So one of the biggest programs that we go after is the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. That's the largest program that the California Transportation Commission administers. It's $800 million per cycle. That's how we fund things like State Route 99, outside of, other programs such as the ITIP, which we've gotten an award before for Avenue 7 through 12. And so that's currently based in statute off of freight miles, because we have so many people driving through our backyard. And now they want to consider all the VMT that's generated locally. And that could put us at a further disadvantage because, as you know, our constituents have to drive further to go to hospitals, to schools, places of employment and such. And so I'll be working with Director Taylor and staff on a draft letter for your consideration to submit. And they're wanting to prioritize investment on the state highway system. And sometimes that doesn't work because, we've already seen that operators have a hard time providing current fixed route service. So more of that fixed route service without having the demand, I think, could be problematic, for us. I think they need to give us the flexibility of investing more into truck only lanes, of maybe investing into micro transit so that we're reaching these harder to reach communities to make it a real value proposition for people to not drive. So pragmatic solutions that we've kind of discussed. And I think we're always having to kind of remind them of is sort of, what we're considering, being able to pitch to them yet again. But none of this, it's all a theoretical exercise if we don't secure our funding source. And with the gas tax, with that executive order, is if there's no money, we can't implement any of it, right? So you're already working hard enough to try to renew Measure T. And I think some of Measure T goes towards investments on state assets like the state highway system. And yet that revenue source keeps declining because folks are telecommuting, cars are more fuel efficient, and they're switching over to zero emission vehicles. So my hope is that at our next board meeting in whether I think that's November, December, we can have a more robust conversation about some of the funding options. Mr. Chair, I know we've spoken about this, previously. We'll be talking about it before the Policy Council as well next month. But because we really need to stabilize our funding source before we could decide how to dedicate resources to compel mode shift while maintaining our obligation of voters of maintaining safety on the state highway system, for all users. So, so aside from a gas tax successor source, responding to cap tie, there's the need to extend the cap and trade program. And the cap and trade program expires in 2030. But the problem is state agencies such as the California State Transportation Agency, which administers the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, they can't program projects after 2026 because there's no more capacity. So we should be working with the legislature on that endeavor so that we can keep receiving revenue for the Transit Capital and Intercity Rail Program, and then the Low Carbon and Transit Operations Program, which is also part of cap and trade. So we'll have a state legislative platform draft for you to consider. It won't contain the governor's budget, obviously, until that gets issued by January 10th. But that's our hope, is that in early 2025, we would again adopt a state legislative platform for your consideration. And then the last note, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, is so there's going to be a ton of turnover. This is the first in the legislature. This is the first class under the new term limits law that is termed out. So it used to be that you could serve 3 terms in the state assembly, a total of 6 years, 2 terms in the Senate, 8 years, so a total of 14. And the new term limits is you could serve a total of 12 limits total in either house. And so the 12-year folks, first class is now termed out. That's going to result in 35 members of the legislature turning over. So it's a quarter of the state legislature. So we'll be making rounds. We're thankful that there really shouldn't be much impact, for us. We'll see what happens with Senator Alvarado Gil's seat. That was a competitive seat. The way it was drawn up under the new redistricting, if you will. So we'll see. There could be a change there, but our delegation should fairly be intact going into 2025. I know I said a lot. I'll stop right there, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments that you or commissioners may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. At this time, I'll ask to see if any of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Corey. Well, thank you again, Gus. I appreciate all the information presented today. I know that part of us here at the Transportation and in conjunction with the Regional Policy Council will be presenting something, maybe a letter of support or some type of fix to our current policy that we have with relation to the gas act and VMT. One of the things that I do note is that with policies that we make here, especially in the state, I mean, they're aggressively wanting us to change or convert to the electrify, but yet they don't think about what's happening with our money now, because now more people are starting to buy these electric vehicles, and we're starting to see now that part of those folks that were there at the gas pump are no longer there. So that's creating a problem with our funding. And I appreciate you highlighting that. I hope that we continue to lobby for that. hope that we can make something happen, especially with our folks here in constituency here in our valley that probably drive longer than normal to commute for their work. Now, aside from that, this is a discussion item. Anyone else wishing to make a comment?
I do have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned the cap and trade program is important to us. Is it true that they're gonna impose further gasoline fees to finance that program?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Commissioner. So currently at the pump, there's in addition to there's local sales tax fees, then there's a state gas tax, there's a federal gas tax, and then there's an imposition of a fee by the Air Resources Board, which is currently 27 cents. So recent conversations suggest that that 27-cent fee might be raised to over 65 cents. And it's really drawing attention from legislators, bipartisan members who are saying, hold on a second, what's going on? And is ARB overreaching on trying to impose such a high fee, which is higher than a gas tax? So there could be legislation. There might be an oversight committee hearing that looks into the responsibilities of the Air Resources Board, and that even maybe tries to kind of claw some of that direction or clarify some of that direction going forward. So that had manifested itself within about the last week and a half to 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And that is a good question, only because as you mentioned, that additional 60-some cents is quite a lot for folks that are probably in more disadvantaged communities. You know, now that work seems to be a working from home for some, that's not a big deal, but it is for us here at the Valley. So appreciate anything that we can do to continue to fight for that. For the record, I did want to mention that Commissioner Gallegos is now here present.
I want to ask one question on that.
Yes, Commissioner Rogers.
Has anyone evoked the recent Supreme Court's decision on the Chevron doctrine in a thought concerning that fee?
I haven't seen any, I haven't heard of that referenced or seen any action on that. Mitch, I don't know if you have either.
No, I think that'll have less of an impact on state regulations. You know, right now, all state regulations have to go through the Office of Administrative Law to be making existing statute more specific. So I'm not sure if that has much of an impact, but this does get to, you know, a little bit this question what Gus mentioned earlier, the idea that when an authority like the Air Resources Board is given very you know, some very broad direction without any guardrails, are you getting the outcome you want?
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Corey, what is the plan for those amendments for VMT for more rural areas, since it's not a level playing field with the urban versus rural? What is the idea of what those amendments could look like?
So our thought before the governor, before CalSTA had actually issued this revision of CAPTI, was they're going to wait for the enactment of Senate Bill 768, which again is charging housing and community development with the responsibility of studying, analyzing, and then justifying how VMT is applied for rural jurisdictions, suburban jurisdictions, which was honestly never the intention. I mean, to be quite frank, I mean, VMT, there's very few places in statute where VMT is even referenced. And the origination of VMT was, it was done as a CEQA exemption for the Sacramento Kings to build a Golden One Arena. And that's where, that's in Senate Bill 743. And it was in the intent language even. So despite the intent language, it's been extrapolated to all of a sudden apply to projects on the state highway system, which was never the intention. So I think that's part of the confusion, complication of what's going on. And so what they're trying to do under, say, CAPTI 2.0, this new document, is they want to codify, instead of having executive orders, they actually want to go into statute and now codify the expectation for a more pronounced VMT reduction as far as your ability to be eligible to receive state dollars. And it doesn't just impact the state competitive programs. This might have an impact on our traditional sources of funding for the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, which is our source of flexible funding that we get from the gas tax. The county can spend that on transit. You could spend it on highways, you know, whatever you like. And then the SHOP program, which is for the number one priority, safety on the state highway system. So it's something to watch for sure. And I think Director Taylor is wanting to weigh in on that. I'm sure the Policy Council is going to want to weigh on that, among other things.
One other question, and I've asked this with some others as well. And this is my frustration, you know, state highway projects that were originally approved for X number of lanes. And, you know, we're at a certain number of lanes, and increasing that capacity to what it was originally approved for is still considered a no-go. Is this the general consensus among legislators and Caltrans that we can't even increase to what the original plan was for some of these state highways?
I wouldn't say that it's the consensus among legislators, because when we enacted Senate Bill 1, it was well understood that Senate Bill 1 was the first time since 1994 that there had been new funding for transportation. And really, if you think about it, imagine what you made working back in 1994 and trying to have lived on that salary or wage for, you know, the better part of 23 years. I mean, you wouldn't be able to make it. And that's what happened with our transportation infrastructure. Is we had such a backlog that we've been slowly chipping away at for the last 7 years. And so you're right. I mean, these projects take years in order to plan, to get environmental clearance on, and then to be teed up in order to be eligible to get state funding. And we're making that argument that as those things have been transpiring, the state's population has also increased. And Supervisor Poitras has made this point in the past that, you know, Highway 99, which, you know, a lot of it was really built in the 50s. Our state population is about tripled, you know, since then. So there's triple the demand. We have way more goods movement. 25% of all the produce in the valley, in the country, is produced in the valley. Where there's talk about more inland ports in the valley. So, and these are not just Madeiran residents that are using Highway 99, is you're having to subsidize the cost for everybody driving through your backyard. And so that does resonate with our legislators. It's just the administration feels compelled because there's heavy influence by other stakeholders, environmental justice folks, environmental groups, and others that feel that something has to be done because of poor air quality, and just trying to get cars off the road. And so we think there's ways to do that, because it's to nobody's interest in order to have congestion and compromise safety on the state highway system. But that's definitely a comment and an argument that we keep mentioning, is we have to be able to finish and complete some of these gaps that still remain in our system.
And I say that specifically for Highway 41 between Fresno and North, because it's 2 lanes at a certain point. And the argument that we hear all the time is, well, the state doesn't approve capacity. Well, it was originally approved as a 6-lane highway. And, you know, the state wants 3 million more homes. They have these big lofty goals, and they don't want to invest anything into something that's going to be, you know, less congestion, or that allows these homes to actually be built. And it's very frustrating on our end to see that.
Right. I think if there's any reassurance, and Mitch can attest to this because he oversaw all of the SB1 programs, is that statute trumps the executive orders. And so as long as the statute allows these projects to be eligible, we still have a puncher's chance of trying to get projects like Highway 41 completed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again, Gus, and thank you, Mitch, for your presentation. I just want to end with this. I know that there's not enough money to complete most of the projects, and I think part of the job that we do to advocate is to make sure that we lobby for these dollars. But more importantly, to Commissioner Weymouth's point, is that, you know, a lot of the times when the state's aggressive policies are to have 3 million homes, they just don't really look at valley needs, right? Because maybe their homes are that they plan for is homes that are closer to multimodal modes of transportation, but we are in rural areas where that's not the case. So where you build out, you're asking demand for homes, but yet, you still have 1950 roads that frankly that just don't match. So again, thank you for all you do. At this time, I'll move on if there's no other questions or comments. All right, we'll move on to item 5B. Mr. Stone, you got this. This is the Madera High Speed Rail Station project update.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this is going to be for information and discussion. Just an update on our station. The project is moving out to Avenue 12. As we know, it'll serve as the Amtrak station until the early 2030s, when the initial operating segment of high-speed rail opens, at which time we'll be one of 5 key stations for commuter rail serving high-speed rail on that start of service. This is just going to be an update on some of the things that have been happening recently. Our colleagues at the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority have been aggressively applying for funds, state and federal, for many years. They recently did apply for what's called the MEGA grant, the Transportation National Infrastructure Project Assistance Program. That is a highly competitive national program. It's for projects that are just too big or too complex to fund through traditional programs, and projects that are expected to really improve the region's economic mobility and safety benefits. So we did receive some good news from Senator Padilla's office last month that there were 2 projects in California that were selected, and ours being one of them. So that's great to hear. We were competitive amongst all the other projects in the nation. And it's just really the latest in a long line of success that we've had for that project, trying to see it become real and be out there. We do have Dan Levitt from San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority here today. He was in Tulare this morning, Madera this afternoon. So he's able to give some extra details, more than I can give. He really does a ton of work. And he's done a ton of work working on this station for the past, really, since I think 2016 was when they put us in the business plan.
Great.
So go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Dylan. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. You can bring that up. And good to see you all in person. Thank you for having me here. And I think I have a lot of really good news to share with you on our efforts with the Madera High Speed Rail Station. And hopefully also, I know there's some confusion sometimes about the station, kind of hopefully clear some of that up and then be able to help you with some other information that you can go to look for more detail about our efforts. So yeah, just wait a second to get this the full screen. I do represent the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority and been working, as Dylan mentioned, in this region for quite some time. But I also represent the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, who's the owner operator of the ACE commuter rail service. So we have one staff that really serves 2 agencies and 2 different rail services. Go to the next slide. I did want to just kind of show you this figure because this shows you how our 2 services will integrate with future high-speed rail service being implemented between Merced and Bakersfield. And we play a really key role for making that system that's going to be operating between Merced and Bakersfield really part of a statewide network. We are extending our A service, which currently now goes to Stockton, all the way down to Merced. And we're also extending ACE up to Sacramento, and then we're expanding the amount of San Joaquin's trains that will connect with high-speed rail. But a key thing I wanted you to note on this figure is that San Joaquin's was currently operating all the way down to Bakersfield. Once high-speed rail begins operations between Merced and Bakersfield, will actually truncate its service at Merced and connect directly with high-speed rail at Merced. And the reason this is so important is that having a Madera high-speed rail station is key to making sure that Madera continues to receive passenger rail service once high-speed rail begins operations between Merced and Bakersfield. High-speed rail initially, when it was conceived, didn't have a Madera station. I think Dylan just mentioned that came in at 2016. In working with the state, both CalSTA and with the High-Speed Rail Authority, my agency, the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, got tasked with doing, because it was a new station, it didn't have environmental clearance and it didn't have funding. So we got tasked both with getting the environmental clearance for the future high-speed rail station and getting the funding for that station as well. In addition, with negotiations between our agency and the state, the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority is expected to be the initial operating agency for high-speed trains on the high-speed rail segment between Merced and Bakersfield. So much of this statewide network that you see will be under our agency operating trains between Merced and Bakersfield, but also north to Sacramento and the Bay Area, and then the thruway bus services that go south to Southern California. You'll be able to take a trip from Southern California as far north as Eureka on a single ticket, with a single ticketing system. We go to the next slide. This just shows more detail about Madera. And once we found out about the Madera station in 2016, we began working with the High Speed Rail Authority, with Caltrans, with CalSTA, and with Madera County and Madera CTC, and with the city of Madera on really looking at where the high speed rail station should be. We looked at our existing station and found there were some real issues with the location for the current station at Madera Acres, where it doesn't have fixed route transit. It doesn't have good access to 99. It doesn't have a lot of opportunities for transit-oriented development. When we came to a conclusion, working with all the partners, was that the best location was along Avenue 12. And so we devised a plan for doing the high speed rail station in really 3 phases. The first phase is to relocate the existing San Joaquin station down to the location along Avenue 12 where high speed rail will be co-located in the future. And then that's the first phase, and that will help us grow ridership initially before high speed rail begins operations. And then we will do the second phase, which does additional improvements at the site, which enables high speed rail operations at the Avenue 12 site. The third phase is the phase that only happens if and when high speed rail extends to the Bay Area or Southern California, because that's when you need the capability of running express trains. With initial high speed rail operations between Merced and Bakersfield, all trains will be stopping at every station. So there's not a need for the express services on what we call phase 2. We go to the next slide. So this is showing you a little closer up each phase. So this is phase 1. And north is sort of facing towards the left. You can see Avenue 12 on the sort of the right hand corner there to give you reference here. But this is phase 1. And for this phase, we do have this phase fully funded through TIRSA awards that we've received and through funding that you provided as well through your SB 125 funds. And we're grateful for that funding. That the funding's been huge. The $12.86 million has really enabled us to leverage about $190 million for this overall program. And so it was a huge component for us to be able to make this project move forward. And can't thank you enough for that and your support for our other applications as well. If you see the green portion there, that's land that's owned by High Speed Rail. And then the yellow is access land that we need to get access to the station, which is largely in the area that High Speed Rail owns. We have purchased in this phase 1 more land than we need for phase 1, because we've also purchased most of the land that we'll need for phase 2 as well. And we've environmentally cleared on the CEQA side, both what we need for phase 1 and for phase 2 as well on the California side. So this is phase 1. It's fully funded. We've completed final design. We're just about ready to start construction. We need to go out and get a contractor, but before we can do that, we do need to get a construction access agreement with the High Speed Rail Authority to get on their land, on their property. We're still in the process of working through that with them. So unfortunately today, that's the one bad news I have for you is we're gonna do a groundbreaking ceremony soon with you, and we'll get that scheduled as soon as we can. But until we get that access agreement with the authority, we cannot move forward with the construction on this. Go to the next slide. This is showing you phase 2. So whereas phase 1 was implementing a station along the BNSF route, which is on the top part of this line, the one that goes horizontal across the top, that's the BNSF, that's where the San Joaquins run. You can see high speed rail is on the sort of that curved route that you see more on the lower part of the shaded area. That's what phase 2 is implementing a platform for high speed rail and about a 2 to 3 mile long stopping track as well for the trains that go off to stop at the station. We are also expanding the parking and expanding the facilities and the access at the station for phase 2. But when this is completed and high speed rail starts operating between Merced and Bakersfield, that's the time where San Joaquin stop operating. Instead, you get on and off at this station at the high speed rail location. The money that we just got for the federal grant, the 54.5 million completes the funding that we need for this phase, which is the key phase to enable high-speed rail operations. We had earlier, I think you remember earlier this year, we got $80 million from the state, from the ITIP funds. The key thing is those funds were being held until we got the full funding, which we now do through the mega award. So now we can actually start doing the final design on this, which we will do concurrently as we do construction for phase one. But now I mean, this is fully funded, enabling us to really be able to say that absolutely we're ready. We've got the CEQA clearance for this. And now we're ready to move forward with planning for the actual implementation for phase two as well. If you go to the next slide, this is showing you a big picture of phase three, which is really doing the west side, putting an additional track and siding track and platform on the west side, and doing a pedestrian overcrossing. And this just kind of shows you how close this is to the community college. And if you go to the next slide, this just gets a little closer for phase three. And again, it's sort of just adding on the other side. So you have a high-speed rail. This now, when phase three is implemented, you have platforms on both sides of the high-speed rail tracks. You have platforms on both sides, and you're connected with a pedestrian overcrossing, and you add additional parking. But at this phase is when you have express capabilities, and so some trains would run through without stopping at Madera. This phase we do not have funded yet. We don't need to implement this until it's clear that high-speed rail will extend to the Bay Area, Southern California. We are in the process of getting environmental clearance for this. The CEQA, our draft environmental document, should be out early next year. And it is important for us to be able to preserve and protect the right-of-way for phase three. Again, we don't need to worry about the cost at this point because that's something that'd be a small cost comparison to what it would take to get to the Bay Area or Southern California. Go to the next slide. This is our schedule. This schedule is a little bit dated. It was done at the end of last year, but for phase two, this is our schedule for phase two, and we're confident we can keep the schedule. And the goal is to make sure that the Madera High-Speed Rail Station is completed for phase two by 2030. So by the time the high-speed rail is the earliest high-speed rail could be operating between Merced and Bakersfield. Their plan right now is between 2030 and 2033, but we believe we get this done at the shortest part of that time period. The one thing that's out of date on this schedule is that phase one is being shown here for the relocated station of being completed by towards the end of 2025. That date has slipped a bit. And so I can't give you, again, an exact date until we get the construction use agreement with High-Speed Rail Authority, but we expect to be able to get you a date on that soon, as soon as we get that done with the authority. But this is our schedule, and the goal, again, is to make sure that by the time High-Speed Rail is operating, that we are ready with a completed station, ready for operations at Madera. And then I have one more slide. So this one is just what's next. So we are looking to get construction going. We will, I mentioned, definitely have a groundbreaking event that we'll want to do with you and a number of different partners. We're looking for competitive bid for the final design for phase two. We do have we have most of the right of way that we need for in terms of acquisition for phase two. We have a little bit that we'll have to still do. I mentioned that we completed CEQA. We will need to do NEPA. We expect that to be a relatively simple NEPA process, but now that we have the federal dollars, that will get underway. And then we're also looking to initiate final design. And then I mentioned too, at the same time we're doing this, we will looking to complete the environmental for phase three as we're doing this concurrently. So we're working on all three phases. I did just before closing, just a couple of things. I'd be remiss if again, there's a lot of folks to thank. First, thank you for all your support. But I did want to thank Caltrans District 6. I mean, in terms of the MEG application, they submitted that application. They've been very supportive of our efforts here with the Madera Station. It wasn't the first time that we applied for this. They applied for it the previous round too. So really, again, appreciate you coming back and doing that again. That was huge for us to be able to move forward. CalSTA, obviously, very important for the success we've had to get funding with the ITIP funds. And so we've had a lot of support through this and also from the city as well as the county. And so we couldn't do this without all of your support. We look forward to continue to work with you. I did mention we do have on our website for the JPA a page that is specifically for this station. We have a fact sheet. It brings us down to sort of a one pager, both sided. And We have detailed information about each phase. So that this is a, key part of what we do. And then in addition, the county is working on redoing the specific plan for the area, a very large area around the station. They put together a nice little booklet. Their work is they should have a draft out relatively soon towards the later part of this year. But that effort's really important too, because that specific plan is about 20 to 30 years out of date. And now with this new plan, it will be much more focused around the high-speed rail station. So that's really key to the future of the county. So with that, I would open up to any questions.
Mr. Chair, real quickly, did you want to announce and maybe I missed it?
Oh, I should have noted. Sorry, thank you. In all my, so, yeah, I was down in Tulare today because we got really good news that we just received through our joint effort with what we call the Value Program. We got another 70 million for TIRSA funds. Much of that funding is for a key project, a part of our effort called the Stockton Diamond. But that did include, I believe, close to 10 million for Madera High Speed Rail Station as well. So we got some additional funds from the state as well for this effort. So again, that's even more good news for Madera, for the station, for high speed rail. Thank you, Patricia. Sorry about that.
Thank
Hot
you.
off the presses. That was just
I
today.
just didn't want to steal your thunder.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for the presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from any of the members? Yes.
I have a question. It appears that the line parallels, or is it parallel or take over the BNSF
So
track?
if we can pull up the slide. So it's basically parallel. And so they don't, I mean, high speed rail does not touch BNSF, but it goes real close. And so that's where at the station, we've kind of picked this location that's in between the two before they come fully together, that enables us to have a very economical station that is, I mean, of the other stations, this is the only, I mean, Fresno is basically an at-grade station, but it requires a fair amount of significant infrastructure. This one can be done with relatively little infrastructure because it is at grade, and we don't need to have a lot of extra work until we do our pedestrian overcrossing. But I mean, it's relatively simple infrastructure to get this implemented. If you look at most of the other stations like at Merced or Kings Tulare, they're on massive and elevated structures. So you see here, we're able to do this pretty economically and relatively simple construction.
It seems like the whole project would have been a lot more efficient if they would have paralleled the BNSF line, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you are. I mean, there's different, the high speed rail route does parallel BNSF for a lot of its route. It does parallel UP for some of it too. There are a number of reasons for all that. For us, I mean, the key was we didn't really have a choice as to where the high speed rail had already decided on alignment. And so we had to look at that alignment and choose the best location along that alignment for where it made sense to put the Madera station.
And if I recall, years back, I think there was another proposed alignment that was parallel to the, I think it's not the BNSF, but the UP.
Yes, there were thoughts of bringing high speed rail through downtown even, but at that time the community didn't. I mean, my understanding was to want the station downtown. So that's you're going way back there.
Yes.
That was a number of years ago.
I recall championing for that, but that didn't happen. But again, thank you again, Dan. Do we have any other questions or comments?
What's the timeline for phase one completion?
So that's, I'm not able to get, we're not going to make 2025. And so hopefully we can do 2026. So the key is to get construction started as quickly as possible. And so we are doing everything we can to get the problem we faced. I think you're aware, high speed rail has had a recent transition. And so it's created a little bit of a difficulty for us where this transition's gone for a bit of time. They do have their new CEO now, but as you can imagine, I mean, there's a lot of things the CEO is dealing with. We're trying to get ourselves up at the top of the list of things. We are working as hard as we can to get this agreement with them done so that we can actually begin construction. And once we can do that, we can give you a specific date.
Let's look like 2026.
That's our hope. That's our hope.
Is a lot of that pressure due to the fact that they're doing the grade separations at Road 26 and the old station is going to be pretty much out of commission at that point.
I mean, I'm not aware that that's an issue with our current, sort of design, our whole open like that. I don't think that, I didn't aware of that issue. So I think I don't think that's the problem. I think that they're just they have a lot of things that they have to focus on. And they have a new CEO, he's just come in. And so for us, we need to get his attention on this issue, and it does take some time to get legal agreements completed, unfortunately.
Any other comments or questions? Dan, in all fairness, I do recall that when they were proposing that alignment, there was no guarantee of a station coming to Madera. So I think that kind of discouraged a lot of the electeds at the time. Again, trying to plan for that at that time, we were hoping to land a station, and here we are today, which seems pretty promising. So I do have a question for you regarding the San Joaquins now.
Yeah.
What kind of service do we have now from Merced to Bakersfield? What kind of ridership, and who are the people riding to these places?
I don't have off the top of my hand an exact number for you for Madera at this point. It's always been, our station here has been low ridership, one of the lower ridership of our, in the valley. And it is what we believe has underperformed other services. San Joaquins as a whole, we are back up basically to pre-pandemic levels. And we are still down one round trip. So we're a little below pandemic levels. We were at a little over 1 million passengers a year. We're more at like 900,000 right now. But when we add the 7th daily round trip back, which we expect to have back in early next year, we will go over pre-pandemic levels. So the ridership is doing well, but Madera Station historically has not done well. We believe it's not because there's not a market. We believe it's largely because the location is not what it could be. An advantage of this location that we have for Avenue 12 in the future, what a lot of people don't, I mean, the San Joaquin serve many markets throughout the state, but a lot of folks probably wouldn't, if you try to imagine what is our number one market that we serve, you probably never guess. But it's that the San Joaquins actually do not really serve commuters throughout the whole service. We really serve, most of our passengers are non-commute trips throughout everything that we serve, but we do have one commute market. And that commute market goes from Hanford and Corcoran to Fresno. So Hanford to Fresno has traditionally been our number one market. Even though we only have one round trip that actually even meets closely sort of the commute market. When we move the station down to Avenue 12 and we have more frequency, you're going to have several trains that offer an opportunity to put in even a market between Madera and Fresno that doesn't even exist today. And so there are the station moving is going to have a lot of different markets that it does throughout the state. But that's one to think about, that we are quite confident that even on a shorter distance, you're going to have people making that trip.
Yeah, and that's good. And I think for me, in listening to some folks out there about the high-speed rail, you know, a lot of people still don't like the idea of the high-speed rail. And as I try to support it and all, you still hear the negativity regarding, well, what markets do we serve from Merced or Bakersfield? Here we are putting billions of dollars on this particular stretch of land, but yet what markets are we serving that we don't already have here in the Central Valley? So can you touch on that?
Yeah, I actually, I did. I think Patricia mentioned I was down in Tulare today. In addition to our big award, I mean, there was a big award for Tulare, COG, and they got $60 million to the Cross Valley corridor. That's to improve the sort of initial phase, which is to improve, expand bus and express bus service, connecting Tulare County and Kings County and future high-speed rail and initially our San Joaquin service. But it will all, this is the 60 million, and before that, they got about 30 million to do electric buses. This investment that they're getting is all basically tied to high-speed rail. I mean, and yet even though it's tied to high-speed rail because it's to provide future connectivity to high-speed rail, it will link the counties and link many markets between Kings and Tulare and serve, it'll connect Tulare to Visalia. So even shorter distance markets are all going to get better transit. You're getting a better network as a whole as a result of the high-speed rail investment, because now we're investing more in public transportation. I think the same can happen here in Madera. We look at what potentially could happen along the Avenue 12 corridor. You see more opportunities for connections for places like the Children's Hospital and other locations, new developments happening along that corridor, as well as the connection to downtown. hopefully bringing even more TOD, but better public transportation services that serve your communities, but also connect you to future high-speed rail. We do, and of course, my role at San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, we are members of the San Joaquin Regional Policy Council. We have taken on a role that goes beyond what we do in terms of our passenger services. We are the lead for this new working group for passenger rail, transit, and land use. We've created a single page sort of vision. I hope you can share that with your board for the whole valley and showing how high-speed rail really helps all the counties, not just within the station area, but really helping enhance public transportation and hopefully transit-oriented development with all the counties. And so we've completed our first piece. We were doing additional planning with all the counties, but we expect by the end of the year to have pieces out for each county, including Madera. We'll be working with you to make sure we help show a vision for how high-speed rail will really help bring further investment to this county and to other counties in the valley.
Thank you. I think, when Prop 1A first was presented, I think it was proposed that the markets that we would encounter would be more of the Bay Area markets. We would have more of those markets coming out to, but I mean, you see that now in the commute. So you also mentioned that at some point you'll see a connection from Bakersfield to the Bay. What does that look like now with all these stations in there? Does that really become a true high-speed rail, or is it?
Well, that's what, if you go back to my first slide after my initial slide, I think thing is that if you keep going further back, if you go that, yeah, there you go. Thank you. I think that the key thing I just know is that high-speed rail's intent is not to go from Merced to Bakersfield. Its intent is to go from the Bay Area to Southern California, Sacramento, and really serve the whole state. But this is where they have the money to build right now is in the valley. What we're seeing here is a network that, I mean, this is not some sort of fancy network, and that this is something that is we already have the throughway bus services. We already serve a statewide network with San Joaquin's, but with high-speed rail, we're going to have a better network. And so it's a start towards getting a better connection to the Bay Area. Right now, you can take our San Joaquin's to the Bay Area, but we only have a relatively limited frequency, and it's sometimes late. Things happen when you're running on the freight line. Plus, it's a relatively slow travel time. This will greatly improve the trip time, even with this network that you see here, which is what is being implemented now. You already see improvement towards when you want to go to the Bay Area. If you're in Bakersfield, as you mentioned, with this network, you cut an hour and a half off the trip time. To even with this, before high-speed rail gets to Oakland or to Sacramento. And so we have a ridership on the San Joaquin, so a little over 1 million a year was what we were doing before. That ridership is going to go up substantially. We should have 2 or 3 times the ridership once we have this new high-speed rail service in place.
Well, thank you. We look forward to that. You said 2023. This is a discussion item only. I'll ask if there's any other comments. If not, do we have any members from the public? Any comment?
I have a question
I'll have your
for,
name.
oh, Janice Gomes
Thank you.
and Madera District 1. So you're saying this high-speed rail, the way I understood it from where you're moving the station, when it's all said and done, is going to take the place of Amtrak?
Yes.
Okay. Amtrak doesn't have anybody on it because have you ridden it yourself?
Yes. I
Through
do
the
run-
valley?
Yes. Yes.
More power to you because you don't have the bathrooms, you don't have the cleanup on it. I know a lot of people won't ride it because of that. And they keep saying they don't have the manpower to keep it clean. So if you gotta up that manpower if you want even more riders on your high-speed rail.
Appreciate your comment. I think I do encourage you to ride the train. I think you'll find that they're quite full. We're getting good ridership, and if you ever find an issue with bathrooms, please tell us. Believe that they are clean and usable.
And one thing we'll do, Mr. Levitt, if you don't mind, is maybe this board here would like to maybe get on one of them San Joaquin's.
Please do.
And we'll take our checklist to make sure.
Yes, please do. Please do, and let us know. I mean, seriously, when you do have an issue, please let us know. Amtrak is our operator, but we are the manager, and we want to make sure that it is a service that everyone's proud of in the valley.
Any questions, comments? I'll close public comment.
Thank you.
This is a discussion item. Thank you so much, Mr. Levitt. Okay, moving on to MCTC sitting as the Madera County Transportation Commission. Item 6, reaffirming all action items taken while sitting as a Transportation Policy Committee.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion from Commissioner Rogers, second from Commissioner Gallegos. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We do have administrative consent items. Do you have any public comment on these items?
Being that online.
Okay, I'll bring it back.
So move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Gallegos, second from Commissioner Weemoff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, item 8, administrative action discussion items. Item 8A, fiscal year 24-25 overall work program and budget, amendment number 2. This is presented by Mr. Troy McNeil.
Thank you, Chair and fellow commissioners. This item, as mentioned, is to approve Amendment 2 to the overall work program and budget. This amendment primarily recognizes the carryover amounts from the previous fiscal year and some changes in assigned employee work hours to the work elements. The budget is decreasing by $43,443 as a result of these changes. Staff recommend approval, and I can answer any questions.
I'll ask if any commissioner has any questions for Mr. McNeil. Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. Any public comment for this item?
Being that online.
See none, hear none. We'll close public comment, bring this back for motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Rogers, second from Commissioner Weymouth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 8B, Master Fund Transfer Agreement, Resolution 24-12. I take it you have this as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is to authorize the executive director to execute a new master fund transfer agreement with Caltrans. We have federal and state grants that are controlled by this agreement. The agreement is for 10 years and was last renewed in 2015. Staff recommend approving Resolution 24-12, which will authorize the executive director to execute the new 10-year agreement. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. Do we have any questions from this board? Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. Anyone wishing to make a comment?
Being that online.
All right, close public comment, bring this back for motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Weymouth, second from Commissioner Rogers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on to MCTC sitting as the Madera County 2006 Transportation Authority. Item 9, this is the authority administrative consent items. If there is no public comment at this moment,
Being that online.
we'll bring it back to the board.
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Gallegos, second from Commissioner Weymouth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 10, authority action discussion items. Item 10A, Measure T renewal update.
Yes, again, Mr. Chair, this item is to provide an update on our outreach efforts. I'd like to turn some time over to Kendall Flint from MCTC Associates to provide us an update on our efforts since our last meeting.
Thank you very much, Troy. It's good to see everybody today. I'm not gonna lie, we got 13 days and I'm ready for that to be over. But I did want to let the board know that we continue to make presentations throughout the county over the last several weeks, including I think the last one we did was at the Oakhurst Rotary. I also want to let you know that in the last 3 weeks, we've had over 2,000 page visits on the MCTA Measure T site with people looking up specific information about the measure itself, what's in it, where money went. So I believe that really does indicate that some of the folks that we were trying to reach out to make sure that they were getting accurate information did take the time to go look at that. We have been doing the best we can in terms of monitoring social media and other places to correct erroneous reporting. I think you've also seen we were successful in getting out a couple of news releases for, for MCTA that were successfully published. And at this point, it's just a matter of waiting. So from here on out, it's really just a matter of the votes. I want to thank each and every one of you for all of your efforts in terms of reaching out to your constituents and making this happen. But we will see what happens on the 5th. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kendall. At this time, I'll ask my board if there's any comments or questions you'd like to make.
I just have one. How many board members do you see on this dais, Kendall?
I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see 4. Oh, hello. That's a trick question. Thank you. It's 5. That was an interesting, yes, we don't have any citizen members of the board as directors. We do have representatives from Caltrans and others that from time to time sit in. I think that's a concept that has been difficult for some folks to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. And I have been seeing a lot more of the Measure T social media platforms and what have you. And I do appreciate all my colleagues that are actually out there supporting it. Thank you so much. It's great to see that we're getting the right word out, and we're trying to debunk anything that has been out there erroneous, like you said. So thank you again. If there's no other questions, I'll ask the public if there's anyone wishing to make a comment.
Seeing none online.
All right, this was just an update, so we'll close that item, move on to item 10B. This is amended agreement, California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, Resolution 2404. Mr. McNeil.
As mentioned, this is to approve a new administration agreement with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. And Resolution 2404, which authorizes the executive director to execute the agreement. With the repayment of the bonds now complete, it is necessary to update our agreement with the state to have the sales tax, the Measure T sales tax revenues sent directly to us again instead of the trustee who is responsible for the debt service. Staff recommends approval, and I can answer any questions.
Any questions from this board? I'll ask if there's any member of the public who can make a comment.
Seeing none online.
Close public comment. We do have a motion from Commissioner Waymo, second from Commissioner Rogers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, other items, miscellaneous. These are items from staff.
Yes, in your packet, under the consent, there was a memo regarding a change of date from November's meeting to December. And we have to do this occasionally, because county has a CSAC conference and it conflicts sometimes with our board meeting. So we are postponing our November meeting, and we will hold it on December 4th. And just wanted to, I think you probably all received a calendar invite from Sandy for the meeting. And so just mark your calendars for December 4th. And since you won't be here, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. I got ahead of myself.
Any other items from staff? That's all we have. Okay, so we'll move on to items from Caltrans.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jim Perald. I'm here representing Michael Navarro for Caltrans. And if you haven't noticed, Michael happens to also be in the audience today. So he representing him, he was out of town, but on his way back, he stopped in. So just a few items I'd like to update you on. We'll talk about some of the projects in the region, and also wanted to talk about I had the Madera High-Speed Rail Station on my list of things to congratulate the region about. So congratulations on that. When we found out about that funding, we also found out through the MPTC program that comes out of Washington, D.C. that the Tulare 6-lane at Page Avenue project was also successful with that funding. I know as a valley that we have a strategy to work together, and so they were able to get $98 million for that project, which was significant. We're also working to put in a TSIP application to fund the rest of that. But that's good news for the valley. It's another opportunity to get another 6-lane segment done. So yeah, that was great news. One of the commissioners at the meeting on Monday asked why we didn't ask for $99 million for the 99 corridor as opposed to 98, but we'll take what we can get. And that was great news. By the way, that was the largest highway grant that we've ever seen in the valley. So big deal. Also wanted to just update folks and staff on the Sustainable Transportation Planning grants for this fiscal year. The grant guidelines and call for applications will be published tomorrow, October 24th. Application deadline was January 8th. It's been moved to the end of the month. I believe it's January 23rd. The District 6 staff will be holding a hybrid application workshop, which will be held on November 7th at 1:30. And once the guidelines are sent out, we will be sending out invitations to that workshop for anyone that wants to participate. Let me move to our project updates. So this is the South Madera 6-lane project. That's widening from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, from Avenue 7 to Avenue 12. The team is currently working on the PSNE and right-of-way phases of that project. So design and right-of-way construction's planned for the fall of 2025. And that aligns with the completion of the CMCP condition. An update on the North Madera 6-lane project. That's from Avenue 17 to Avenue 22. Let's see, the PA&ED phase of this project is in the 24-25 fiscal year. So that's the environmental phase. And a kickoff meeting for that was held late August of this year. The downtown Madera Cap M, which is a capital preventative maintenance project. That one is targeting January 2025 for RTL, which is Caltrans acronym for, you've got plans that are ready to go out and advertise. And it's expected to go to construction in the fall of next year. Next project to report on is the State Route 99 233 interchange improvement program. This project proposes to install roundabouts at the ramp termini of 99 and 233 interchange. The bridge site submittals have been completed and sent to our headquarter office for review. And our design team is currently working on the right-of-way requirements and plan to submit it as soon as the survey data has been received. Again, RTL on that project is now targeting April of 2026. So that's when it should be ready to, all the design work is done. And after that, it can go out to be publicized for award. The Cottonwood Creek Bridge Replacement Program, construction's anticipated to be completed spring, summer of 2025. Southbound off-ramp for the eastbound Avenue 12 is currently open to the public. We're targeting opening the northbound off-ramp in late November, early December. The Madera South Expressway design is on schedule to be completed in June of 2025, advertised later that year. And that project, as you're aware, there's some issues there at the intersection of State Route 41 and Avenue 12. And so we'll be participating in Supervisor Wahoff's traffic open house, where we'll be discussing potential near-term improvements at State Route 41 and Avenue 12, and that meeting's scheduled for Monday, the 28th of October. The meeting will be held at the Madera Ranchos Middle School from 6 to 7:30. And just 2 more projects. The Madera Ranchos Rehab Project. We're currently working on the punch list for that project. Due to PG&E energizing and a few other loose ends, expect to be completed by the end of this month. And then lastly, the Chowchilla CAPM project. We completed the environmental phase last month in September, and the design should be complete by March of 2026. So that is my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there's any comments, questions. That is pretty clear. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 11C, items from commissioners. I'll start off with Commissioner Truce. Do you have any to report? All right, Commissioner Gager.
Nothing to report.
Nothing.
Just to reiterate, the traffic open house, it's mainly talking points. We're gonna bring in several people, not just Caltrans, but some of the engineering firms, Wildan, Dewberry. We'll also have the sheriff's office there, CHP, and just kind of giving the citizens an overview of near-term plans, long-term plans, and some timelines, just to give people an idea and keep them up to speed on all the new growth and traffic problems and what we're gonna do to make it as easy as possible for our folks. So that is Monday, the 28th from 6 to 7:30 at the Ranchos Middle School.
Awesome.
Where at the middle school is it?
It's in the multi-purpose room, so it's just follow the crowd.
And included in your packet, item 4K has the information there as well.
Perfect. Well, at this moment, I don't have anything to report. I just did want to say, I apologize for not getting your name at
Oh,
that second. I just
Don't worry
turned
about it.
49 on Friday. And it seems like every year my memory starts phasing away, but I do apologize. And again, Commissioner,
No worries, brother.
I say Waymoff or say Wamhoff?
Wamhoff.
Thank you. I apologize for that, but I want to make sure I corrected
You're
that.
the first one to ever mess it up.
Well, I'm sorry. Sure.
Go to sleep with that one.
With that, we'll come to our last item, which is the adjournment. This meeting is now adjourned. Yeah.
I just. I didn't say anything.